computer.
Got it. Good.
And
Thank
somebody
you.
else just joined us.
Oh, it's Alan.
Okay.
Hi, Alan. Thank you for joining us. I think that Alan and Jeff may have chatted at some point, but we're going to find out more about the relationship of these two. I know that Alan is aware of Jeff's work.
My impression is I don't know any of you.
Well, we all know you.
Why don't we just go around the room with a quick 30-second introduction for everyone. We'll start with Larry, Lawrence, Lorenzo.
Oh, me?
Yes.
I'm a weird guy that's been involved in 9/11 since before it happened. It's a part of my life. I'm fascinated by the way things work, and I just want to understand what happened. So that's been the foundation, or that's been the impetus of my studies, is saying what happened here. I've viewed a lot of other people's presentations. Some of them have a lot going for them, but there's always been something that was lacking. And I needed to understand. The mechanics are simple for me. Just understanding the mechanics is foundational. So that's
what's your background?
Okay, high school, mechanical drafting, geometry, my favorite subjects, music, swimming team. Day after I graduated high school, I joined the Air Force for 4 years. Went to basic tech school, learned aircraft mechanics, and was a B-52 ground crew mechanic for 3.5 years in Limestone, Maine. Got out, became a hippie. Didn't take long for that transition. Moved up to Maine for 7 years and lived off the land pretty much. Then came back and started working, doing odd jobs, jack of all trades stuff. Had a small moving company and a small building contracting company. Just hands-on work, machinist. I'm a consultant, designer, and a fabricator. Fascinating.
Don't skip
Fascinating.
the Science Museum.
Oh, for 7 years, I was the senior exhibit maintenance technician at the Museum of Science in Boston, where I just loved the challenge of making things work that people had never seen work since they'd been there, especially in the mechanical cases. So, the mechanical relationships have always fascinated me. Loved working at the Museum of Science, except for I had a manager that was horrible and got terminated.
Let's not get into that.
Well, the day after I got terminated, I was offered a job with Techno Frolics, that lasted about 5 years, and it was one of the best managers and best jobs I'd ever had. After that, my father passed away, so I kind of moved out here to his house, bought it for my sister, and operated his machine shop and did a lot of fabrication to make a living out here. And I'm pretty much retired. Still have a little bit of work coming in. I have a project right now, as a matter of fact, that's going to net me a few $100s. But that's where I am today.
And you're also a musician.
Also a musician. Let me uncover.
Why don't you just tell us what you've not done? Wouldn't that be faster?
Well, I'm not a physicist.
He's not an accountant, and I'll tell you that
I'm
much.
not an accountant.
Well, he didn't need to be. He's got you.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Susan doesn't need to know anything about the physical world.
Right. I got him.
Well, she obviously
I
doesn't
balance
need
his
to.
books, and he repairs my shit.
Wonderful to have someone that can repair stuff. It's wonderful.
Oh, it is. I
Okay.
can't even hang a picture without destroying a wall. I have to get him to hang pictures for me.
Well, I bring over my little Stanley Yankee, wonderful chrome-plated brass push drill to hang her pictures. So
A drill?
oh,
What about a
absolutely.
hammer and nail?
That's
Oh, you
how I
destroyed-
destroyed my walls.
Oh, okay. Okay. So
Yeah, pre-drilling is key. The hook fits into a hole. It's gravity that works, but the damage can be done by hammering. So you're avoiding any kind of, especially the old horsehair and plaster, lath and plaster walls.
Mhm. I have an old house. Yeah, so that was way longer than 30 seconds.
Okay, that's the first.
I've been there.
I'm having a little
It's a
caffeine
great house.
tonight. I'm
It's a
having
great house.
caffeine.
It is. I
Okay.
love my house, but it being 1930 house, almost 100 years old, it's got its issues. So
Can I
anyway,
get-
moving right along, I'm in Worcester,
That's me.
Massachusetts, and I've been involved in the 9/11 Truth movement in various projects since 2007, a little late to the game, considering some of these others. I think that's about it for me. Jeff, tell us about yourself.
Okay, at the age of 30, I published a magazine, started it in Phoenix, Arizona, called Senior Magazine. My clients, of course, were Pfizer, Merck, Humana, Cigna, the big banks, all the major players. But, it was all fluff. I couldn't write what I wanted to write, nor could I allow my writers to write what they wanted to write because I'd lose my advertisers. In 2001, I was home watching 9/11, and I recognized immediately that it was a nuclear event. So I spent from 2001 to 2018 alone, unaffiliated with anyone. Although I was invited to the Vancouver deal, I declined. But I met in 2018 four physicists, didn't know each other, but all had the same, all agreed that 9/11, the 9/11 event took place the same way. So when I met them, we agreed to put a book together, which I have the copyright to, and which I actually put together and published. I belong to a website called Academia EDU, which has 204 million members, mostly MDs and PhDs. I'm a high school and college dropout. However, I have a little over 2,100 online page reads per day. And over the last 12 months, I have a little over 85,000 visitors, a little over 56,000 new visitors, and I average about 11 downloads a day. And my primary visitors are, and one of them's new, are university professors, department heads, alumnus, emeritus, grad, and undergrads. And university professors was recently replaced by litigation consultants, which I'd never seen before.
What's the name of your book, and is it published?
It is published on Amazon, and it's also free at Academia EDU. It's called The Ground Zero Model by Heinz Palmer. Heinz is a nuclear physicist, and three other physicists also put the book together. Their bios in the back of the book, and their bios are really extraordinary. They're really extraordinary.
How'd you meet them?
I've never met them, although I carry on a conversation with Heinz on a weekly basis through email and by telephone. We haven't talked by phone in a couple of months because of what's happening in Germany. But I maintain a relationship with Heinz and one of the other physicists. And we're absolutely 100% confident in what we've found. What we found was the nuclear footprint of 9/11.
Right. A number of people have published that as well.
Okay, so,
Jane, you're next.
okay, I was gonna ask Jeff about his, I was gonna ask everybody about their educational background. Not that it
Well,
matters to me because my father didn't really have one.
I
But
joined,
just,
I joined Cornell, the physics department for 2 years. So I the latest physics documentation. And interestingly, Cornell has visited my website 12 times in the last 12 months. I reach a little over 500 research and educational institutions in a little over 140 countries.
The reason I say that is because I know 50, when my grandfather was alive, people that ran the country didn't have educations. Now everybody thinks it's a requisite to do anything. It's not. You know, so many people are so self-taught. My father had a 198 IQ, and he didn't get his college degree till after he retired from the Air Force, being a colonel in the Air Force. So the country needs to look at the fact that people that don't have an education have a lot to offer.
My
And
grandfather dropped out of high school to put his sister through college. And he ended up passing the bar and becoming a judge in Elizabeth, New Jersey, without even a high school diploma.
Could I ask the person who's talking now, could you give us your name and also the name of your website? Because I couldn't understand it.
Jeff Prager. Go ahead, Jeff, give me your website.
My website is academia.edu.
Volume
Okay.
up.
So that's your own website, or that's a website that you have joined?
Well, it's a website I've joined. I do have my own website. Give me a second and I'll give you that address. I have to log in. Just take a second.
So if I understand correctly, the book is called The Ground Zero Model. It's billed as being by German physicist Heinz Palmer, but you, Jeff Prager, own the copyright.
Right. I wrote chapter 2. It's a 200-page book. Chapter 2 is only 11 pages. I specialize in peer review, medical peer review. So that's what the 11 pages are about. My website is prager.academia.edu.
Oh, okay. Good.
And I published well over 100 books. I think about 80 or so are on that website. They're all free PDF downloads.
Yeah, and Jeff, when you said you were invited to Vancouver, I believe you were invited to the Vancouver, it was after the 10th anniversary of the Vancouver hearings, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I spoke at the Vancouver hearings. I thought you were there.
No, a guy whose name I can't remember, I believe, read some of my material.
He presented your work.
Yes.
Right.
Doug something or other. And I wasn't pleased about that. I've tried really hard to do this alone, to not be connected with anyone in the 9/11 movement. And to my dismay, James Fetzer published my material in his own book, like word for word, which was really.
Yeah. Without your permission, right?
Right.
Well, I just got an email recently that Fetzer is lining up with some white supremacists. And I'm like,
right.
oh,
That was to be expected.
I didn't expect that. I don't want to deal with that.
You know, I
Frankly.
also, in 2012, I debated the guy from Brigham Young who was connected to A&E. Can't remember his name. He's
Stephen
also
Jones.
Stephen Jones, right.
Yeah, Stephen Jones. I debated Stephen Jones for about 60 days in November and December of 2012 through email, up to 20, 30 emails a day back and forth. He bowed out when Sandy Hook took place. And he just said, I have more important things to do. but he was losing the debate. He's written specifically, he's written documents against my premises.
Right. You know, I got that. I know that's what's, yeah. There's a
What
device.
does Sandy Hook have to do with it?
What's that?
What does Sandy Hook have to do with it?
Sandy Hook, well, this has to do with Gordon Duff. Gordon Duff put me and the guy from Brigham Young together. And when Sandy Hook started, I watched Gordon Duff and two other people put out absolutely false data on Sandy Hook. In fact, Gordon called me one day and said, you know, I have a lead that the Latin Kings, which is a gang, were instrumental in Sandy Hook, and that 3 Mossad agents were part of Sandy Hook. And I just blew them off. And then I watched them, you know, post to the internet absolutely false data, which was disturbing to say the least. So, but at the same time, Jones just kind of bailed. He just sent me an email one day. I'm gonna end this conversation. I have too many more important things to do. So in the end, he couldn't answer any of my questions. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should.
That's what happens when.
Mr.
I'm
Music
sorry.
here needs to.
Let Susan moderate this so that, you know.
Yeah, Susan, let's move
I'm
it
sorry,
along.
I had muted myself. Yeah, let's move along with the introductions, okay? Jane, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, okay.
Most of
I've
us
got
know,
a
but
undergrad. I'm an Air Force brat. My dad was 34 years. We went everywhere, all over the country, overseas. And I got a BA in nutrition and biochemistry, got a master's in biochemistry and biophysics, got a law degree from University of Idaho in law. And I can say for a fact that school is really good to babysit kids because I've been there a long time. And then I've worked, I think I first got here back to Texas. I wanted to stay up in Idaho because I loved it up there, but I couldn't talk to anybody in my family and my parents were getting older. So I came back to Texas and passed the bar here and then started working here and got involved with the JFK assassination group. They meet, used to be 2 groups, now it's 3. And I was one of the attorneys on JFK Lancer. And I think that if you look at the way the research I've seen in that versus the research on what we're doing now, it's like the CIA never goes away. You know, it just never goes away. It's always got some new trick to pull. So you see patterns in the research when you're looking at these assassinations that show you kind of what they don't really aren't real creative. They keep using the same stuff over and over again. And you just are sad to learn how your country's got a lot of bad things going on. And I was hoping that we would find the culprits in this 9/11 before it gets too late, because I don't want to keep going to conferences. I want people to be prosecuted and put in jail. And I don't want this to ever happen to Americans again. I don't like it happening overseas either. I don't know why we went to Iraq. I haven't got a clue. But I do know their gold was stolen. A lot of their museum stuff was stolen. My secretary, whose son went over there and came back, and she said the soldiers were saying that our military stole the gold. You know, they stole the stuff from the country. They had all these museum pieces. What are we doing that for? You know, I mean, it's just the whole thing is
Criminal.
It's criminal. It's criminal. And, you know, it appears that our country is being run by criminal operations and government entities and businesses. So we're not in good shape, frankly. So I didn't really, 9/11, I didn't understand what happened that day, but it's one of those things like JFK, you knew where you were, 9/11, you knew where you were. And, they've crossed the line when they start killing Americans on American soil. That's all I can say. And I didn't understand that, I think, until about 2014 when I was looking at Richard Gage's stuff. I just didn't understand that. I thought, yeah, gung ho, let's go get whoever the jerk is that did all this stuff. Well, it never was really defined too well. And you just kept watching and watching, thinking they defined things, and they didn't. And when I saw another commission getting created, when we had one with JFK, I'm like, oh God, again? This is how they handle things.
Yeah.
This is how they handle the public. They do another damn commission. So that, got us involved and started after we got a list of lawyers from the Gage operation.
And you're the executive director of Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry.
Right. Well, Mick and I started the Lawyers Committee back in 2015 is when we incorporated.
Or that's
And
Mick Harrison.
Mick Harrison, yeah. Yep. That's it.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right. And I'm sorry, my addled
Alan.
Alan. Thank you. Alan, your turn.
All right. Well, my background is complicated, but I grew up near Stewart International Airport down in Orange County, New York, and which was also an Air Force base, and probably the main jump into Europe and Middle East for military planes and stuff. And I went to school, got my degree in computer science, and I studied music for a long time. I went to Berklee College of Music back in the 80s, and consequently from there worked in music for a while and found that kind of wanting to do something more. I studied first, mathematics and not just computer science, though. It was spread over through electrical engineering. And in that, I got an affinity for, calculus 4 and physics. And I think I took like every physics course they offered at the State University of New Paltz. I graduated probably 98 or 99. I don't recall exactly because I was working full time at the, started working for WDST and designing some communications.
What's WDST?
Well, it was a radio station at first, and they wanted to be the first internet broadcasting and do. We set up a studio with 5 small, like professional DJ, as they imagined it in the new century, with computer links and chat rooms and all this stuff. Back in started doing that in '99, and then streaming kind of exploded at that time, and I had been at a IEEE meeting down in New York City, which is engineering, and I met some folks that were going to the Audio Engineering Society Expo, and they talked me into going to that. And I saw the broadcast, a demonstration, audio and video there. And I took that the next year and set up DST with an audio streaming server, and they had the funds to get a T1 hooked up to the studio, and they put about 5 different radio stations live on the internet for 24/7. Some of it was automated, and we set up a server to serve individual songs from digital media instead of, and it was like kind of groundbreaking at the time, bleeding edge, if you would. And then a lot of.
But can I
WYSIWYG
ask you a question? When
Sure.
you did all that, did you have to deal with BMI, like paying
Yeah,
fees?
well, no. Here's they use the loophole at the time, and it was set up by an attorney, of course, and he was he did promotion locally, promoting music in venues for acts that were on his radio station. So this is all in Woodstock, New York, Village, and so they got that whole history with music with Albert Grossman and his music business through there. But I'll get back to where that's all pretty much before I got interested in, before 9/11. Now, on 9/11, I was in my parents' home at the 8 miles off the end of this runway in Maybrook, New York, and I was woken up by airplanes like buzzing my house because the runway is the alternate landing site for it's military. It was put in there when Rockefeller was governor of New York. It was an alternate landing site for the space shuttle. They've flown black ops out of there since God knows when, probably since Vietnam. My cousin was a Vietnam vet, and he went back several times through that portal, through that port, fly out. But something I think woke me up. I turned on the TV, and they were just reporting at that time that an airplane had flown, a small private airplane had flown into the tower, and it wasn't really exciting news at that point. They showed a little smoke, and the rest went on from that. But I was woken out of bed by these airplanes coming in low, fast. And to tell you the truth, I live west, so it was more like it was taking off. Most on this runway, they'd be coming off of taking off, heading towards where I was at. So whatever was coming in low and fast and loud was not commercial jetliners, I don't think. And it was bigger than, they take C-5As off of there than Galaxies. And they take off and land there. And now the new transports that we have, and they're tremendously loud.
Why was it that day that things were busier than you normally heard?
Obviously, when I turned on I don't know. I turned on the TV, made myself a cup of tea, and within the next half hour, there was, within the next hour, there was another plane into another building. So, at that time, I thought things were landing to get out of the sky before, somebody was calling something. But then I read about military exercises, and they run a reserve unit out of there. And at the time, I think they had besides the C-5As, they were flying Marine jump jets, but they take off and go like straight off of, like a helicopter. They go straight up and then boom, they're gone.
Like the Harriers.
Yeah.
Harriers, that's exactly.
Yeah.
A British thing. So they were.
Can you remind us what airfield this was, airport?
This is now Stewart International Airport.
Oh, you're talking about on 9/11.
Near Newburgh, New York.
Are you talking about on 9/11?
On 9/11, that morning, there was a heavy, I believe it was military traffic, because having lived there and grown up there, that's what my experience on that runway, on that trajectory, were transport planes, fighter jets. You didn't get commercial airlines on that. They take off a lot quicker and not use as much runway as a lot of these flights currently.
Right. Well, when I get to, this is Barbara, and when I get to my short introduction, I'm going to add why I think Stewart Air Force Base was critical to the actual plot.
Okay, I'll be right back. I need to take
my ideas. They have, I believe, the airplanes crisscrossed over the they could have done a switch up there with a touch and go landing type of thing, because
Yes,
both
that's correct.
planes
The first
crossed
two flights,
that
11
airfield.
Yeah.
11
Lawrence has got to go somewhere.
Yeah, I gotta go take Dingo out. I'll be back in a minute or two. He's ringing his bell, and
When the dog has to go out, he has to go out. Go.
right back. Hold on, Dingo.
Okay, well, Alan can keep going, can he?
Yep.
Well, there was a couple other weird
Alan,
things going on. I heard from other people.
Let Alan finish.
I just want to know Alan's last name.
My last name, Abraham.
Okay.
Abrahams.
Okay, thank you.
My father was, who raised me, was a politician in Orange County, New York, town of Montgomery, and was a police officer for 30 some years, and at the same time also worked in the head of the public works department in the village of Maybrook, where I was sleeping in his house that day. And they were in Pennsylvania, of all places, at his Air Force reunion. So he was like an Air Force star in World War II, he's got all the medals and all that stuff. So I'm sorry if I sound glib about military, but it kind of gets a little bit, he never liked to talk about it at all. And it was probably for the better, because I have a different view on a lot of military. So
My dad didn't either.
yeah,
Neither did me.
a week before he died, he talked to me like I was a human being, man. Because you pull yourself up by your bootstrap type of thing.
Honey, I was doing 5BX exercises at the age of 5. If you remember those other Air Force exercises in a book.
He had me digging holes and hauling blocks and putting pipes in with the local public works department when I was younger. So, but anyway, he was in Pennsylvania. I was watching the house that day and was woken up. I'd been there already a week, and there was nothing that would have shown that there. Now, I also in Orange County, I heard of a bunch of stuff on the ground going on that day, with military vehicles going up Route 52 towards. There's like an FBI. It's an old airfield on the top of a mountain near Pine Bush, New York. And they use it for training automobile driving and with some government agencies. And, there's always rumors of UFOs up there since I was a kid, so growing up in that area. So that was just strange, but there was some military convoys going back and forth between there and I don't know the connection or anything. I didn't see it that day. I stayed in the house because it was like I couldn't walk away from the TV set watching. And then,
But you were hearing these planes at the same time you were watching TV, right?
Shortly after, I heard the planes. They woke me up. I walked out and turned on the TV and made myself some tea. It's like automatic, get some caffeine first thing in the morning. And,
do I understand correctly that you were on 9/11 close enough to Stewart Air Force Base that you could hear things coming and going but not see them?
Did you hear him, Alan? Well,
Alan's frozen up for a minute.
Alan's frozen. Alan just got frozen.
Yeah. Um, what was the question? Oh, about the visual. I heard that, Barbara. Yeah.
So my question was, if I understand correctly, on 9/11, you were close enough to Stewart Air Force Base where you were inside a building. You watched TV, you saw presumably the second plane going into the second tower. And then did you hear these planes going in and out of Stewart Air Force Base, or were you close enough to see them, or what?
It woke him
Alan
up.
he's still frozen up, so you might want to get off the call and then get onto it again.
Barbara, he said it woke him up. All the plane activity woke him up.
So presumably that's before the towers were hit?
Before
Yes.
he knew it was going on.
Yeah.
Before he turned on the TV.
Okay.
Yes. But now he's gone, so now we don't have the story finished.
Why don't we move on to Barbara?
Well, let's wait and see if we can, if Alan, can someone call him or something?
Yeah, I could give him a call.
Because Barbara actually wants to know what he's saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Alan, you might want to sign off if you can hear us and then sign back on. Hopefully that one frees you if there's a glitch. And I'm going to give Alan a call right now.
While we wait, has anyone seen the 5-clip video, only 5 clips of Building 7 being destroyed from across the Hudson River?
Yeah.
Filmed from New Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have or not.
Right. I
I'd
think
like
one of
to
the
see
things
it.
we're going to look at is the amount of pyroclastic clouds that were rising before the building collapse. That's one of the things we'll be looking at.
I lost something.
He's still on are you here, Alan?
He's still frozen. But he's on the phone with Lorenzo right now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, he's calling in apparently.
Okay. Well, he's on mute.
You need to unmute.
That's Bill. I think that's checking in right
Oh
now.
yeah, that's a 978 area code.
Mm.
Bill, is that you? I think you need to unmute.
Just nod your head, Bill.
No picture either.
I know.
He's
You're
calling
still
now.
on mute, Bill. Hopefully he'll be.
Did anyone get a hold of Alan?
Yeah, I did. He's restarting his computer, I believe. He thinks there's a glitch. So
Okay. Well, while we're waiting, Jeff, were you going to say something?
Has anyone seen the 4 helicopters that were above, flying around during 9/11 that show the glitches that indicate the detonation? I had slides, and I don't know if I can show these images.
Well, where is that? What's the source of these pictures?
These are 4 helicopters that were flying in New York City, about 5 miles from the towers. And you can see the glitches in the images. And this was the detonation.
Right, these are glitches in the images that were being taken from the helicopter. It was an interference with the video recording equipment.
Exactly. Now, 3 of the helicopters had their sound turned off, but 1 helicopter had the sound turned on. So you can actually hear the glitch in that one helicopter.
Mhm.
From what source? I mean, the Air Force not gonna give you that stuff. Is it a news helicopter?
I think they were news helicopters. There was a military helicopter, at least one, but they were
These are-
ordered to
Oh,
land.
okay.
No, these are ABC, CBS. Okay,
Yeah,
are Chapter 12 WNYW, ABC's new chapter, Chapter 4 WNBC, and WCBS chapter. And they're flying about 5 miles from the towers.
And what source is that book? Is that one of your books?
Yeah, this is my book, The Ground Zero Model.
Okay.
And what's interesting is these helicopter images were discarded. It was thought that because of the glitches, they were worthless. And Heinz Palmer, of course, disagreed and looked for images and found them. And we use them in the book to show the detonation. We have other glitches in on-ground cameras. These are cameras on ground that show glitches on the ground, and these are taken at the exact same time as the helicopter images. And we have these glitches also taken at the exact same time as the helicopter glitches.
Now, I have a question. And this would be a correlation that would help support all of this, which has to do with the seismic events that occurred and their timing, which I do admire the work that Richard did in presenting the seismic evidence. We can get into that a little bit later, though. But the correlation between the event that Jeff is talking about and the seismology may be very well correlated in the timing.
They are.
Okay. Well, let's finish the last two people here. Is Alan back on? So Barbara can finish.
Alan, can you hear us?
He just muted himself again, but he'll hopefully be able to unmute. There we go. You're unmuted now, Alan. So, Alan, are you there? He's there, but he's not coming through.
Okay, then how about Bill? Is it Bill?
I hope that Bill is able to unmute and join the conversation.
Can't you unmute him?
I can ask to unmute, but if he's muted at his end,
Yeah,
I can't do
okay.
anything about that.
I can message him now. Please unmute.
Well, I guess while we're waiting, Barbara can give us her background.
yeah, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. You're gonna
Okay.
have to wait for me. You're gonna have to wait for me for a moment because I have no electricity. I have to plug. I'm about to lose
All right.
charge on my cell phone.
And Bill
So
is
I have to
unmuted.
plug it
Bill is also unmuted now, so we could let Bill go if he is able to.
Okay, good.
Are you there, Bill?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yay.
Bill, thank you for joining us.
Okay. I'm trying to get the video thing going, but until then,
Well, you're familiar with the work, so I mean, it'd be great to see your face. Oh, what am I doing in the screen? What happened here? I didn't want to share myself.
Oh, don't share me.
What's going on here? Stop share. I made a boo-boo.
Okay.
Well, Bill, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do and how you got involved.
And your background.
well, first of all, I'm my name's Bill, and I'm Lorenzo's friend and Susan. I've listened to Lorenzo's, some of his synthesis that he's done, and I find it very interesting. I don't have any particular dog in the fight or anything like that. I'm just sort of interested in the work you guys are doing. We've talked a little bit about some of the geological data because that's where my professional interest is. And, it's kind of hard to dismiss seismic events as being nothing. They are what they are. They're recorded all over the world. So,
Bill, can we have your background?
I'm a professional geologist.
Okay.
You could go a little deeper, expound on that, Bill?
Yeah, do
Well,
you guys mind? Do you guys mind if I interrupt for a minute? I'm going to lose this charge on my cell phone and I can't get it back.
Oh dear. Okay. Go ahead.
No, never mind. I just got the power supply to work. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay.
I don't, I don't have not much to say about that. I mean, I'm not a specialist in seismology, so I'm a general geologist, and I really study groundwater stuff. That said, it doesn't seem like whatever happened here got much attention from geologists at all. Lorenzo showed me a study that was done by some folks from one of the universities in New York, and it looked sort of interesting, but it would have been nice to see some after the fact drilling and so on, but I'm not, as far as I know, there isn't any, right, Lorenzo?
Well, there were core drill samples taken. There are a number of images of core drill operations after they cleaned out the bathtubs. So there are hopefully core samples as evidence, if we ever get that far, available so that we'd be able to see what was down below, the condition of the bedrock where each one of those samples was taken.
Filing a FOIA on that would be good.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what's interesting to me, as a professional interest, is I recall from the stuff Lorenzo showed me that the professors from, was it Hofstra University? I think it was, I forget.
Charles Mergurian, Geology Department, Hofstra University, Hempstead, New York, was one of the principals that wrote the report.
Yeah, and they postulated that there was a proglacial valley beneath the towers, which is not implausible to me, to be honest with you. And so the question becomes matching what was before versus what's after. And that would be necessary to draw any conclusions, regarding whether there was a change to the geologic materials or not. And I haven't seen anything so far that's extremely compelling in either way. Lorenzo's done some work that suggests there was a somewhat profound modification to the top of the bedrock area, but the data is limited, right, Lorenzo?
I'm sorry that you're unable to view the screen, but I do have that page up with the images of the pre and post 9/11 geotechnical surveys. So anybody that wants to ask questions about this, I do have the building number 4 a page up right now and in share screen.
So on the left is the pre-construction mapping that his pointer is looking at. Of course, those who can't see the screen can't see this, but we can, we're recording this, so you'll be able to see it later.
Right.
And go ahead.
Go ahead, honey. Go ahead, sweetie.
So on the right is after 9/11. And
This is,
you can see the concentric circles don't really match. You can
this is
tell.
the same site,
Yep.
Liberty Street, Church Street. And these are locus marks here. I was able to correlate these or overlay this on a site map. Go ahead, Susan.
No, I think that's about it. Because most, two of us can't see the screen. Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Jeff can see it
We're
though.
limited. Yeah.
I think that Jeff can see the screen.
Yeah.
I can.
Good.
And
But-
Jane too.
One,
Yep.
one would have to ask if they don't match, there would have to be non-geologic reasons for the difference. And I guess I'm not prepared to say what those were or could be until I could really compare the difference. But that's kind of just what Lorenzo and I have discussed a little bit in the past.
Right. Bill is very much on board, but he's still very skeptical. It took a while for me to get him to even accept the possibility, but showing him the whole series of excavation, the sequence of excavation, we'll go through this page a little bit deeper as soon as we're done with introductions.
All right. Bill, before we move on to Barbara, why don't you just say where you got your education?
I went to Vanderbilt University and the University of Montana.
Nashville.
And yeah,
Okay.
I
And
went to St. Edward's Academy in Nashville in high school, which is close to Vanderbilt. We used to date Vanderbilt boys.
mhm. And maybe you don't want to say where you work. Is that correct?
no, I really don't, because to be
Okay.
honest with you, I'm not 100% on board with this stuff. I find it very interesting, but I'm not about to sign a petition or anything like that. And so, I just assume
Okay.
not.
All right.
Yeah.
I think we lost Barbara.
Well, they're having flooding over there
Yeah.
and everything,
Oh.
and no electricity.
She's
So
okay.
if she doesn't have a charged battery on her cell, which
Yeah.
she's bad about keeping, she may or may not be back on.
Oh, dear.
I could give you a little background on Barbara. She was, she worked at, actually it's on our website, but she was at the White House with Reagan, came into the White House with him. But before that, she went to Stanford. She was married also when she was at Stanford to a Stanford professor, and she got her degrees there. She's from Carmel Valley area, and her family had a big farm that she was raised on. And she then got a master's degree, and then Barbara, you here? I'm trying to give your background since you were on.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I just called back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I just had to call back in.
Okay, give us your background.
Oh, okay. Have you moved on to me then?
Yeah,
Yes.
waiting for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, wouldn't you know it? That's when my phone cut off. Okay. Okay, so I'm Barbara Honneger, and I'm on the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry with Jane. I'm now the chairman of the board. God help me. No, it's a very important organization. It's an honor to be part of it. So, that's what I'm doing now. And Jane can attest that it's a kind of a full-time job for some of us, depending upon what's happening. So anyway, my background, I went to Stanford University. I got a undergraduate degree. My BA is in communications, journalism, writing. And so that's That's kind of appropriate for somebody whose initials are BS, right? BS. Honneger. No, I'm a good writer. I've been paid big bucks all my life for my writing and editing. Anyway, so I got that degree. And then I stayed around Stanford University. I never wanted to leave the university. I stayed at Stanford for another almost 10 years. It's what's called a graduate at large. And it's a wonderful program where only about 15 students in the whole campus, which is, has like 30,000 students or something. There are only about 15 students at that time who were accepted into graduate at large programs, which enabled you to take courses in any graduate or undergraduate department in the entire campus, in the entire university, as if you had been accepted to all of them. So it was really an amazing opportunity, and I decided you got to basically create your own master's or PhD, and I focused on the neuropsychology and neurophysiology of human and non-human primate communication. I worked with, Penny Patterson and Coco, the sign language talking gorilla. And I worked with Dr. Carl Pribram, who is famous for the holographic theory of memory and perception. So that was through the mid 1970s. And then I found out, I've always been very guided. My life has been full of the most amazing synchronicities, which Jane can attest to. She's experienced some of them. And so I wanted to understand my own life, basically. And of course, the way the universe actually works. And so I learned that the first ever graduate program in consciousness studies and experimental parapsychology was opening here in California, in the East San Francisco Bay. And I became the first student and the first graduate. So I have that degree. That was an evening class for working adults. I was working at the time. And so I got that degree in June of 1981. And between when I started that program in 1976 and 1971, I was working at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University for Dr. Martin Anderson, who ended up being tapped by Ronald Reagan to be his chief domestic policy advisor. So off I go, like, holding on to Marty's coattails, and land up in the West Wing of the White House, right over the Oval Office for the first 2 years of the Reagan administration, where I was independently qualified, even though I was there by coattails. I had not, thank God, earned it. To get into the West Wing of the White House, you almost have to kill everyone under you on the hierarchy, right? I was just dropped like from a helicopter into the office. So that was my political period. And then I published the book, October Surprise, on the true story behind the Iran side of Iran-Contra. And that was on the cover of Publishers Weekly, and it kind of made me world famous. I also became the first resignation of conscience in the Reagan White House and Justice Department, to about 10 days of international publicity. And then that set me up for coming back to California, where I did my book October Surprise, and then 9/11 happened. By the way, the link between what we're trying to do in the 9/11 truth movement and my work on the true story, the deep story behind the Iran side of Iran-Contra, is that my work exposing the truth about that resulted in a full subpoena power House of Representatives congressional investigation funded at a level higher than the 9/11 Commission, and a government printing office published report of the House October Surprise Task Force. So my work was successful in creating or instigating a new congressional investigation, which is what many people in our movement still think we want. I have big red flags about that. I think that it's a bad idea, but regardless, that's one of the reasons that I got involved. So getting up to 9/11, beginning in, I think it was 1995, November of 95, I started working for the United States Navy I was the senior military affairs journalist at the Naval Postgraduate School, which is DoD's premier science, technology, and national security affairs graduate research university of the Department of Defense. And that's right here in Monterey, California, where I live, where we're experiencing, a huge rainstorm right now. There's an evacuation order for the river at the bottom of my hill, an evacuation warning. So anyway, on 9/11, I was at the Naval Postgraduate School, and I was not allowed into the base. It's a military base, even though it's a graduate research university. And I was not allowed into the base because only so-called essential personnel were allowed in, maybe a handful of people. I was turned away. I went to my mother's home in Carmel, California, on the water here, in Central California coast. And I said, turn on the TV, we're under attack, which is what I had been told at the check-in gate at the military base for the Naval Postgraduate School. And the moment I saw, I got there because of the time difference to the East Coast, I got there after the second tower was hit, and they were showing, the towers had not yet come down. And I was seeing both towers smoking, and then I watched as the second tower came down. The second tower came down. So that the moment I saw that, I knew there was something, there was a rat here. And just like I did when I saw the Reagan and Bush Sr. take their oath of office on January 20th, 1981, and then the 52 hostages were released seconds afterwards. That resulted in my book, October Surprise, in the House investigation and report. But my nose said, my journalistic nose said, you've got to look into this. And I've been doing it ever since. I've been a major researcher, public speaker, investigator, activist. I put up the third beam, the physical third beam in New York City to represent World Trade Center 7 with Richard Gage. It was my vision, and I actually executed it. Architects and engineers paid for half of it. They only put in the money, but I did it. And also, I had the vision for the Boston Tea Party for 9/11 Truth, which Susan Serpa, I met Susan there. I think that's how we met.
We still have artifacts from that too, Barbara.
I know you do. Susan held it up. Remember at one of our calls, you still have one of those crates that were mocked up to look like a crate of the 9/11 Commission reports. I love it.
Which we dumped in the harbor.
Which we dumped in the harbor. I was there pushing the first one over the railing. Captured on film, by the way. Which I have if anybody's interested in looking at it. So anyway, bottom line is I focus on the Pentagon attack and also the anthrax attacks, but I'm very knowledgeable about the World Trade Center. Richard Gage is now on our board for Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry. And I should say that there's some music in the background.
Somebody's phone is going off.
Barbara. It's your phone, Barbara, something in your...
No, it wasn't
No,
hers.
no.
It was
No, it's not.
Alan's.
Oh,
Yeah, no, it wasn't mine. So anyway, I'm almost done with my
Okay.
background. The gist of it, but when we talk about the substance, I do want to talk about Stewart Air Force Base and why I think it was central to the real plot.
I'm gonna have to take a break a minute, guys. My dog's got to go out too, and I can't control them anymore. So
Yep.
Yeah, my partner just took our dogs out.
Susan's partner took his dog out a few minutes ago.
Can I speak for a moment?
What, Jeff?
Can I speak for a moment?
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, many people don't know this. The US government spent millions of dollars accessing every type of document, and they located every female that either lived, worked, or was in New York City on 9/11.
Every who? Female?
Every female that was pregnant.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
They accessed Social Security data, every type of data you can imagine.
How do
And
we
they
know that, Joe?
because I have the peer-reviewed report that states it.
Oh.
It's in my book.
And why did they do that?
I'm sorry.
Why did they do that?
Well, they did. My opinion is they did that to determine what pregnancy outcomes were, and the pregnancy outcomes were. Let me get to the right page here. 2.1% low birth weights, which is an extraordinary statistic, and also a significant number of children born with small head circumferences, which is an indication of low dose radiation, radioactive radiation.
Uh-huh.
So they tracked these women during their pregnancies, and that's what they found. So that leads me to believe that there was a significant amount of low dose radiation above ground during 9/11.
Right.
If you look at, there's a book from 1970. In 1970, there was a symposium in Nevada where about 500 nuclear physicists got together in Nevada. The book is 935 pages. We've all read it, me and the other 4 physicists. And Edward Teller was the lead in that symposium. And Teller was tasked with developing, this is, let me see here. This is a picture of the book. I don't know if you can see that. And that symposium, Edward Teller was tasked with developing a nuclear device that children could play with that would not harm them. Now, when I was 10 years old, my dad bought me a nuclear toy kit where I could put together a nuclear device that would not harm me. And this was called a Prager reactor. And the Prager reactor works as follows. It reaches criticality, and because of the molecules of oxygen, it reduces criticality. So it goes up and down. It reaches criticality, it comes back down, reaches criticality, comes back down, so on and so forth. And it continues doing that. That's the Prager reactor. I don't remember what Prager stands for, but TRIGA does stand for something which I can't remember offhand. And because the US government spent so much money tracking pregnant women who lived, worked, or were in New York City on 9/11, they knew something. And they wanted to know what those birth outcomes were. And they were small head circumference and low birth weights, which is a hallmark of exposure to low dose nuclear radiation. Now, if we go back to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we find that even today, people are affected by the low dose radiation they received from those explosions. Low dose radiation spares no body parts. It affects everything. It affects sleep, psychiatry, it affects all organs. It just affects every body part and just everything. So our contention, our position is that the government needed to find out and needed to track those pregnancies to determine what the low dose radiation, what effect the low dose radiation had on those pregnant women. So if you think about it, for the government to spend millions of dollars going through Social Security records, educational records, work records, tax records, every record they could possibly find, and track thousands of pregnant women who lived, worked, or were in New York City on 9/11, that's absolutely fascinating, and is fascinating to me. There is a plethora of peer-reviewed material on PubMed on 9/11. There's probably at least a minimum of 500 peer-reviewed reports on 9/11 on PubMed. I've downloaded and read most of them, and they are very telling. Again, it's our contention that the device, not a bomb, it was a device that had no moving parts. And it used a water booster so that what was expelled from elevator 55 at 75 meters below the building was simply liquid granite. The thorium and uranium remained in the ground. The liquid granite exited the bottom of the building, shot up to the top. The planes hitting the building opened the buildings so that there was an escape for the liquid granite so that it didn't explode the buildings all over the city. And this occurred in about 13 seconds total. And so the liquid granite hit the top of the building and then just came back down again, primarily X-rays and some neutrons moving at about 22,000 meters per second, and a very small amount of gamma. But all went back down again, and this was a self-sealing device. So within seconds, material was exuded from the bottom of the buildings, from below the buildings, and then as it came back down again, it sealed itself. So within that time period, you could not hear an explosion. Based on the fact that, you know, sound, the speed of sound. So we heard no explosion. So that's what I wanted to say, actually. What was developed was a nuclear chimney, where a 20 kiloton bomb estimated with a water booster at the top and the uranium and thorium below it, just simply, and it cooked for about an hour. That's why the buildings took so long to fall. Cooked for about an hour, melted the granite, and the buildings were simply destroyed by steam and granite, and liquid granite, and some X-rays and some neutrons and some gamma. Very little. And we saw very, very little. Yeah, exactly. We saw very, very little radioactive radiation above ground. Very little.
Can I ask, are you talking about under all of the towers, or just 1, 2, 7, and 4, or what?
Okay, only under 1 and 2. Building 7 was set to be detonated very early, but the sprinkler system had been turned off, so there was no water in the building. So the building had to cook for hours and hours. Now, one of our physicists, I can't remember his name offhand, but I'll tell you. One of our physicists, his name is Andreas Piper. Andreas found a hinge in Building 7 where the trusses were supported by nothing. The trusses did not go all the way down. So Piper found this hinge in Building 7, which allowed, after the building had cooked for many hours, to be destroyed very easily. Let me show you a picture of Building 7. This is very, very interesting. Building 7 was a pile of about 30 feet of basically rust, but it was covered with the granite that covered the building. And the granite, here's the picture.
Do you want to share have you got an image that you could share a screen with, Jeff?
Well, I can show it here.
I wish we could, yeah, we got it. Okay, good.
Okay, you see that there, and then you can see the lower picture there. Okay, the granite is fully intact. Let me explain why that happens. Iron can take on one neutron molecule and not be destroyed. Two neutron molecules will break apart an iron molecule. Granite can take on 21 neutrons before being destroyed. So the granite was not destroyed, and the granite literally fell on top of all of the rust from Building 7. Building 7 was destroyed by rust. The long term, it was supposed to be destroyed early in the morning. We know that. And we heard the lady in the UK saying Building 7 was destroyed, but it wasn't. Of course, it was still standing. So Building 7, the reactor beneath Building 7 was allowed to heat Building 7 for hours and hours and hours, which caused extreme rust. That's why the building fell, and the hinge that Andreas Piper found within the blueprints, which is in our book. And the granite just fell neatly on top of the pile of rust, undisturbed. The granite is undisturbed, as you could see in the picture I showed, if you could see it. The granite squares are undisturbed.
Does this relate to Judy Wood's discussions about the cars that had rust on the certain parts of the cars?
Well, my opinion of Judy is not high. Cars did catch fire. A lot of cars caught on fire. We have pictures in our book of cars on fire with trees not on fire, with paper all around not on fire, just cars exploding. Now there's
what's the reason for that?
Well,
Wet.
it's EMT causes metal to catch on fire. So that's why the cars caught on fire, because they were metal.
You agree with that? EMP was pulse, some kind of weapon we don't know about yet? Do you agree with that?
No, the EMP is part of a nuclear detonation.
Okay.
A nuclear detonation releases EMP at the same time. So the cars caught on fire. A lot of cars. We have numerous pictures of cars on fire surrounded by paper and trees that are not on fire. There's a New York City took 1,200 testimonies from people around Ground Zero. And I believe her last name is Androvic. And part of her testimony is blacked out, but part of her testimony is not. And she describes running away from the towers and a car door just exploding off the car and hitting her in the shoulder and knocking her down. And she also describes seeing cars burst into fire for no reason at all. Now this is in the 1,200 testimonies, which are public record, that you can access them, kept by by New York City. So Androvic's testimony is really critical, as is the guy, I can't remember his name, but he's famous. The guy that helped everybody and helped the guys out of the elevator. And
What was
Julian
Andre's?
Rodriguez.
Yeah, what was Andre's name? Full name?
Androvic. Can't remember her first. I believe it was Judy, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
And you can find that in the New York. It's like a library of 1,200 testimonies from people that were around Zero when the buildings fell.
Okay, I do have some questions and some comments to, as my analysis, we're very much in concurrent with the use of the thermonuclear devices beneath the buildings. My opinion, my studies have led me in a different direction than yours.
That
Well,
direction.
before we leave, Jeff, Jeff, could you please clarify? You just used the word nuclear reactor. So are you proposing that there were actual nuclear reactors in the deep basements of World Trade Center 1 and 2?
Yes, but these were very simple 1970s reactors. They only had two components, uranium and thorium, and they literally had no moving parts.
And what's the purpose of having them there?
The purpose is to, over a period of 1 hour, they melt the granite that surrounds them. They're surrounded by granite. Now, you can't move granite. Granite can't be moved. It can only be melted. So the uranium and thorium together melted the granite. The water booster above the device. And so what happened was, what was exuded from the bottom of the building was simply steam and liquid granite and water. So you could essentially say the building.
What is the purpose? Why wouldn't doing that? First of all, what was the purpose of having this old nuclear reactors down there? Number one, and number two, if it was intentionally brought to criticality, which I think you're implying, wouldn't that endanger breaking the bathtub and having the Hudson River flow in?
Well, the bathtub was broken.
Not enough to bring the Hudson River in.
Correct, but it was broken. And the purpose was to destroy the buildings without having the buildings explode all over New York City. So what we saw was, the two towers literally fall into their own footprint. Now, if you look at what was done after the towers were destroyed, for instance, there are two large concrete pools where the two towers were, 6 feet of concrete, and then a whole lot of water in the middle. And if you look at building 7, where the hottest part of building 7 was, they created a round pool of water. We show this in the book. Here's what these look like. Okay, let me see if I can get this onto the screen. I have a real hard time doing this.
Oh, the memorial pools.
Right, the memorial pools. So you see the 2 memorial pools, and then you see all 3 memorial pools. So you see the round one, which was where the hottest part of building 7 was. And then you see the 2 pools that are square, and those are radiation barriers. And that's why they were built. That's why the cement is 6 feet thick. The center hole in the square pool is 30 feet by 30 feet, which is the exact dimensions of the elevator 7 exit hole for the device. This was a very, very simple device. No moving parts, based on Edward Teller's Trigger reactor.
Okay, now I think what you're saying, tell me if I'm wrong, is that these devices were put in before the towers were built and they were beneath the lowest 6th basement level. Is that correct?
That is correct. When I first started investigating 9/11, I actually found a document that said in order to build steel skyscrapers that tall in New York City, they had to have a demolition method before the towers could be built. Now, I didn't save that, fortunately, and I can't find it again. But there was a document, and I did read it, and I did see it, that said tall steel skyscrapers had to have a demolition program in order for them to be built.
Yes, that's correct. And George Duff has published the Russian former nuclear expert for their army, for their special forces. I forget his name at the moment, but he makes the claim that not only is that what?
Dmitry Kalazov.
Yeah, Kalazov.
Right.
Kalazov claims that he knows that not only is that correct, that that the city of New York, probably the New York and New Jersey, port authorities, that they required that before the towers could be built, and that the means of detonation that were selected was nuclear. That's what he claims. And also, when I was in Seattle, my hostess, this was 2013 or 14, my hostess for my presentation at the Seattle Town Hall that became my Pentagon documentary called Behind the Smoke Curtain, she told me that she had, after 9/11, she had done research online, and she found a website that was kind of like, the website for building professionals, which stated explicitly that the World Trade Center towers were built with niches, NICHES, were built with niches so that explosive devices or incendiaries could be easily placed in them from the elevator shaft. And she went back to find.
That is correct. There's a link to a video in my book of a woman who worked for the mayor's office, and she worked in a contracting facility that was contracted to build the mayor's bunker. And so they had the blueprints for the buildings. And she saw that the buildings were wired for demolition. And she states that in
Yeah.
the video. And the video is linked in my book. And so she talks
Okay,
about,
by building, the mayor's office was in World Trade Center 7.
correct.
So
But she
you're
had,
talking about also the towers.
yeah, she had the blueprints for all 3 buildings.
Okay, I get it. Yeah, well, that's very important. So that, and of course they scrubbed that. By the time Martha went back when I was at her place, she was my hostess. She went back because I said, please try to find that. And it was scrubbed, of course.
Right, but this video linked in my book is still available. That's
Great.
because all of the videos and all of the text and all of the images and everything in our book remains on our server.
Mhm.
Good.
So
Okay.
it won't be taken down.
Does this happen in all the high rises in the country?
I don't know. But what she does say is that after the buildings came down, the other personnel in the office were talking about how fire could not have taken down the buildings. That it wasn't fire, that they knew that the buildings were wired for demolition. And it's a very, very interesting video. It's very short. I think it's about 5 minutes, and it's well worth reading. You know, if you go to my website and download the Ground Zero model, and even though I get money from Amazon from my book, I don't care. The money is immaterial. My book is available in Japan, the EU, the UK, and the United States. So I get 4 checks a month. But I prefer that people download the PDF. And the reason is that the PDF, the links are clickable. You can't click a link in a paperback book. But in a PDF,
Right.
you can click all the links. And it's very important to download the PDF from my website so that you can click the links. And
Okay, and that would be prager.academia.edu.
it's actually, here, let me get it again.
You could
It's
share
actually-
it. You could share it in the chat if you want to do that, Jeff.
Yeah, do
Yeah,
that.
but some of us also cannot see. So if you could say it as well.
Okay,
I
so
can
let
send
me
it to you, Barbara.
let me get to my website so I can get the address. It's, you know, https :/ Prager .academia.edu. And then
Right.
if I can figure out how to share it in the chat, how do I do that?
There's a chat at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to stop sharing this so I can
Got
see
it.
what the screen looks like. Okay, stop share.
There.
At the
Wait.
bottom where there's a chat.
Okay,
You got it. You got it. Yep. Good.
There you go. Now you have to scroll down because I've got about 80 books there.
Yep.
And then there's a second book. It's only 25 pages. It's much more technical, and it's called The Ground Zero Code. It's only about 25 pages, but it's highly technical.
Can we understand it? I'm a
Um,
lawyer.
I think so. Let me tell you who the authors are, okay? Dr. David Madliner studied at Cologne University, both mathematics and physics. He graduated in 2008 on numerical simulations in astrophysics with a software to simulate hydrodynamics and gravitation. During his studies, he worked at the German Center for Aerospace on the software and electronics of a Mars rover for Beagle 2, and later on Sesame, an experiment for Philae, the probe that made the first soft landing on a comet in 2014. He earned his PhD at Cal University, researching young stellar objects with an emphasis on radiative transfer and optimization with Monte Carlo methods. As a postdoc, he then worked at the renowned Max Planck Society, observing young stellar objects with IR interferometry and he's now a system architect for digital designs and develops optical sensor technology for autonomous systems.
How
And
do
we
you
want
spell his name? How do you spell his name?
David Mad, M-A-D, L-E-N-E-R, David Mad Lenner.
Okay.
The other important physicist is Dr. Francois Roby, R-O-B-Y, and he's an associate professor at a university in France. In February of 2019, he released a preliminary physics paper on the HAL Scientific Archive website demonstrating the use of nuclear energy at ground zero. Since April of 2019, check this out, Dr. Roby is forbidden of any teaching and or research activity for 4 years by the French University administration, although nobody among his students or colleagues made any complaints about him. February 2017, however, the president of the French Zionist lobby sent a defamatory letter to the president of Dr. Roby's university, where the physicist was represented in particular as a mad scientist and an anti-Semite because of the writings on his blog. The letter strongly suggested taking heavy sanctions against Dr. Roby, which the university implemented promptly. So Dr. Roby, now he's probably able to teach now. I don't know if he is, he may have retired, but he wasn't allowed on university property for 4 years simply because the French Zionist lobby sent a letter to the president of the university.
Yeah, I'm not surprised because of the Israeli connection to all this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Susan, are you here?
I am here.
Good.
Yeah.
And Heinz Palmer.
I would like to get
Smoking her
on
cigarette
to,
so we can't see her.
yeah, Susan, I would like to share the fundamentals, the mechanics, as soon as Jeff is done, because, you know, even though we agree, we totally concur that there were well, in my opinion, thermonuclear events. The mode of destruction is you know, I'm not in agreement at all about the method of destruction or the sequence of events. So I'd like to make that presentation to Jane and Barbara while they're here.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
please remember I can't see anything. I can only hear.
Okay, well, I
But
can, again, we can do this call, you know, we can do this call again so I mean, I wanted to include Jeff because he's very, you know, very studied, very well studied on the subject. I'm again a simple mechanic, and a very.
Well, why don't you address a direct question to Jeff?
Well, I'm going to get the screen up again.
Okay.
And
Describe
go,
what we're looking at for Barbara and
And listen,
Bill.
let's try to just do this weekly because you know, my brain can only absorb so much here.
Yeah,
All
it's a
right.
lot.
I'm going to get right to the fundamental. What piqued my focus and interest in this and how we got here. So there's going to be a process of discovery, and this image here is. Can you all see? Oh, I know Barbara can't.
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. If we
Okay.
do this weekly, I will put together a series of slides.
Okay,
Great.
Yeah, because you know, there's a reason why they have 50 minutes per class in college. Your brain
this
gets
is-
tired
this is
and
already
you don't absorb.
almost
Yeah.
2 hours. Yeah, it's almost 2 hours into this, and I don't want to draw it on too long because I know that people are getting tired and leaving.
I agree. I never get tired and I'll never leave.
I will never get tired. Let me preface it by saying I've been involved in 9/11 before Alan even heard the aircraft flying around New York.
All right,
So
you want to tell that story?
really quickly, it's a weird story, but I was up from around 2 o'clock in the morning until around 6 o'clock in the morning with a X-Plane, which is a flight simulator application that I had just gotten on, you know, shortly before that, and I was learning how to fly. And I chose an airport in New York on the early morning early morning between 2 and 6 a.m. of 9/11, and I took off and I noticed that there were these two things sticking up in the distance, and I started flying between them. And then I flew around them, kind of like the Beavis and Butthead thing, which I had never seen before, but using them as pylons so I could do figure eights around them. And then I started crashing the airplane into the buildings. And it would crash into the building, it would send me back to the runway, and I'd take off and do this a number of times. I have two roommates, Michael Blackmer and Bill Farrar, who witnessed me doing this flight simulation and
On the
crashed
same day?
on the
Nine-
morning of the event
Before it
before anything
happened.
happened.
That's weird.
It is weird. It is totally weird. So this will explain, at least partially, why I feel so attached to the event. For years, until I finally saw a picture of building number 7, and that had to do with doing the research and then eventually discovering Richard Gage, his presentation. We went to see Richard in Harvard Square in 2006, maybe, at the Unitarian Church, and then shortly after that, I went to see David Griffin at the Episcopal Church in Harvard Square. So, this has been going on for a real long time, and I've been studying it. That's a preface to what you see in these pictures, which are much later discoveries. But this picture here puzzled me for the longest time because I didn't know where it was. And I think I mentioned to Jane that David Meiswinkle eventually kind of gave me a poke in the direction of the geological report, which I visited. I had visited before, but had not noticed the geotechnical surveys. So these images here, you can see that they're
Describe
fairly
the
well.
images.
You see it, Susan?
I don't see any.
Describe the images so that Barbara knows what we're talking about.
All right. The image that I have right now is a meme that I made for 9/11 synthesis, which explains that the picture that you're looking at,
The photograph.
the photograph that you're looking at, is of two what are measured by geotechnical surveys, two 40-foot diameter spheroid, not a perfect sphere, but spheroid cavities that were discovered underneath building number 4 after they had cleaned out and excavated the cavities. Now, this is the end of the story here, this picture that you see.
I can't.
You can't see that on your screen?
No.
Oh, dear.
I
Well,
see it.
I see it.
Huh.
That's not a good sign.
Jeff, maybe you need to change your view so that you can, or actually, that wouldn't affect it either. I have no idea why you can't see it when we can.
Yeah, I can't.
I'm going to stop share and reshare and see if that helps.
Okay, and see you now.
Okay,
Oh,
now do it now.
Yeah, there must be an internet problem. I didn't
Yeah,
want
now
that either.
see a black screen.
Share screen. I want to share this screen. Hopefully it'll be visible. We can do this again, but for Jane, this is a really good primer for Jane if she hasn't seen it before. So I'd like to continue, and we can have another conversation at your convenience, pretty much, Jeff.
Yeah.
Anytime
And
you want.
it'll be on the recording that I will send to you all.
Okay, so I'm going to just go through this presentation, and I have questions about it because I'll just run through it in the order that I've presented it in this page on the website. So these two cavities apparently were not represented in the pre-construction topographic survey, and we'll take another look at that. And I have questions regarding this. I asked, was this the first seismic event of the day, the one that the explosion that William Rodriguez spoke of? The reason for that is because it was a low level compared to the seismology that occurred beneath each of the towers, which were 2.1 and 2.3 on the seismic scale of the day. This was a much lesser event, a much closer to the surface event that set up the Raleigh waves rather than the shock waves. There are two types of seismic measurements. One that measures the ripple of the earth, which would say that it's either an air burst that caused air to compress the earth and set up like a trampoline, or it was an event fairly close to the surface but below that had some shock waves that emanated sideways through the rock. But most of the energy was a lot of the energy was vented. The purpose of these thermonuclear explosions, in my opinion, was to produce a subsidence crater beneath each of the towers and building number 7, but we're not looking at either of those buildings right now, any of those 3 buildings right now. We're still looking at building number 4, because that's where these cavities are located. This is, again, the geotechnical survey overlaid on the site plan, pre 9/11 and post 9/11. And they're quite different. And I can, describe them. This is called a till-filled valley. And look at this area over here, and then look at this area. We're going to go into a detail of this to show the flow, energy flow. But before we do that, a detail that shows that 60 feet below sea level and 100 feet below sea level, or in other words, 40 feet between the pre-existing bedrock level, which this dotted line represents, and the bottoming of each of these cavities. Notice that there are these overhangs. These are solid sections of bedrock that have not been removed yet, but they are broken away from the base, the base bedrock. They are broken. This one here is called an upheaval, and this is a subsidence where the material below it gave way and allowed the section of bedrock to come down into the hole. And for some reason, because of the location, this would also have been probably very similar over on this side here, that there would have been similar overhangs, but they had been removed, or they had already been removed by the time they did the survey. And again, we have a really good definition at about 80 feet, which is about 20 feet below the bedrock level. There's a bulge, and that's an indicator that that's probably the depth that the device was set at, so that the energy radiates out radially. It comes out from the center, and it can only go as far as the bedrock absorbing the heat will allow until it reaches its limit of energy. So a thermonuclear event, which would also create quite a shock wave, although this one is fairly close to the surface, it creates a shock wave, recorded seismologically again. And these are the location. Again, directly underneath building number 4, one almost underneath the lobby and one just outside the east wall of building number 4. All right. Topographics, simple stuff. Richard Gage on the seismology at approximately 8:46, just before the first plane strikes the first tower, there was an event recorded, and there was a lot of energy produced in that event, enough, in my opinion, to produce very high temperature and pressure steam, which is what did the harm to the people in the low levels, along with the radiation that would have been in this, vented with the steam. Although my surmisation is that after having studied Mr. Teller's work and Project Plowshare, is that a neutron device would have been the selective device for this, because its radioactive half-life is much lower, and the radiation does not penetrate much more than a couple of feet of concrete. It's meant to kill people used in an airburst, but it's also an adjustable thermonuclear device. You can adjust the yield. It's called dial-a-yield. And these devices, the thermobaric, the output of each one of these devices can be adjusted by adjusting the amount, and Jeff would know, I forget what gas it is that's injected into the reaction that is the limiting factor in a neutron thermonuclear reaction. So they've dialed these devices in to have enough heat to melt the bedrock and form a subsidence, which happens after the melting of bedrock. Now, this is my take on the destructive mechanics. This being the evidence that they did indeed use most likely thermonuclear devices, because it's so clearly indicated, especially in this cross section here, which is essentially, again, a 40-foot spheroid cavity in the bedrock. This is a combination of schist, Manhattan schist, and granite. And we'll go into the pictures of the site during cleanup. Oh, before we do that, the seismology of the event that I correlate with, I'm just saying, I think this is building number 4. The steam would have, high pressure always goes to low, high temperature always goes to low, and the pressure and the steam, people came out of the elevator shafts with their skin peeling off, and some of them are still survivors today. This is William Rodriguez's testimony regarding survivors that came up out of the elevator with skin peeling off their bodies. We won't go into the testimony. Now we'll go into the sequential images of the cleanup. Just an indicator that there was an awful lot of heat down below because of the steam rising from the site after the event. I don't know the date of this picture, but I do know that they, around sometime in early 2002, they had probably gotten down to the level where they were cleaning up beneath building number 4. You can also see that most of the bedrock surrounding this is fairly flat. Bedrock has been broken off. This used to be a solid plane of bedrock. It did not have these breaks in it. And this water is from having water pumped in it for weeks after the event to cool it down so they'd be able to go down and excavate it. This is a picture of the 2 chimneys, call them nuclear chimneys. Below this is where you'll find those spheroid cavities. Each one of these later, after they broke away, chipped away you can also see that there are core drilling going on. So there are samples. Each one of these is a core drill. They were taking samples, so that evidence is recorded somewhere in New York, most hopefully. You can see that they haven't really done any cleaning out. You can see there's a little bit of tire tracks here, and there is traffic between these cavities. They're still driving over these cavities. I mean, underneath this, you will discover what is underneath it as we continue to scroll down. There's also this steel or iron tube. Probably it appears to be at least 18 inches in diameter, but I don't know. It's there's a perspective thing here. This is one of my favorite pictures because it shows where the bedrock had faults in it. You can see that this is aged. The surface texture of this, the color is aged. The minerals in it have oxidized because of their exposure. But you look down here, and you can also see that there's broken. This is chipped off and broken. They've started doing some chipping. That's a fairly fresh break there. And you can also see that there is till that's falling in from the top. These round rocks, which are from what they call a till-filled valley, are starting to fall down into the hole. And there's also wood in this till that is falling down into the hole. That was aged as ice age till, but it's up here, not down here. This is new. This is brand spanking new. It's bright, it's crisp, it's coarse, it's rough like sandpaper. I haven't touched it yet, but I'm looking at the opportunity to go down into this cavity someday. It's underneath building number 4. This is workers that are washing the walls of the cavities down and hoeing the slurry towards sump pumps. So they're able to pump the slurry out. This is all material that had been pressure washed off the sides of the cavity. And this you can see is a fractured texture. This is where those overhangs that you saw in the picture had been, that they chipped off later to make the cavity workable so they'd be able to build in it again. They can't have loose loose chunks of bedrock, and I'll consider them chunks right now. And you can see that the size of the people and the equipment down here. They're also starting to put in piers for the new building number 4 at this point. You can see there's a foundational structure going in here, and there's foundation work going on over in this area here too.
They never built building 4 again.
Oh yeah, they did.
They did?
Oh yeah, it went up
Okay.
short. This is building number 7, by the way. That was built before they had finished cleaning this cavity out. Building number 7 was built. Thanks to Chris Joya for sharing his information. I did not know what this building was, but 2 or 3 years ago, Susan.
Yep.
Susan and I had a conference, a Zoom with Chris, and he said, yeah, that's the new building number 7. Chris also testified to being underneath the reflecting pools and saying that there was still steel sticking up out of the bedrock, out of the rubble, out of the subsidences beneath each of these towers. I concur with Jeff that the water in these pools was probably a shield, something to keep, although with all the water that went into cooling down the site after the event, it was probably diluted and pumped out or evaporated. In any case, it was diluted. This is one of my favorite pictures. I call this one Hades' cradle or Satan's hammock or something like that. But this is in the side of the cavity, and you can see the gradient. The bedrock beneath the World Trade Center is a schist, a granite compound, and also pegamatite, which might be a partial result of the nuclear explosions, the thermonuclear events. But the sediment rock, the metamorphic rock in this area had been formed at some point as the Earth was forming as a bunch of horizontal layers. But during the changing of the geology of the Earth, it upended so that these what used to be horizontal layers are now vertical, and you can see the valleys or the gullies because of the different melting points of the bedrock, and I'll get into a detail of that in a minute too. But this is melted into the side of the cavity. The color of this. I mean, this is a brilliant, beautiful. This is what got my interest in the first place. I said, holy shit, they set up a thermonuclear event beneath the World Trade Center. I thought this was beneath the Twin Towers, but thanks to David Meiswinkle, I finally discovered the geological surveys and said, holy shit, it's beneath building number 4. Why the fuck did they do that? Still don't know. More slurry being, pressure washed. An overview again of the cavity showing the post office building in this direction and the new building number 7 over here. Again, this pipe, whatever it's for, that was drilled into the bedrock somewhere beneath building number 4. I haven't got the exact location of that because it was not that I know included in any of the reports I've been able to retrieve. Again, they're doing foundational work, creating piers for the new building number 4. So this cavity, the way it is probably still beneath the new building number 4. Just saying, there are 2 40-foot spheroid cavities located beneath building number 4. That's pretty much it for building number 4. I'm going to go into ground zero just to go through this real quick.
Do you think we could do this next week and start it again?
Yeah.
My brain's getting
Yeah.
a little tired.
Yeah, I would love to. I'd love to have Jeff on board because I know that he's really into the nuclear physics. But this is a completely new interpretation of forensic evidence for Jeff to look at, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to. I hope you'll come and be a part of my presentation. Again, there's so much to do with the nuclear. I avoided this for the longest time, Jane. I could not.
Yeah, I
couldn't.
want Barbara to look at these pictures too, and she can't right now.
Yeah, well, the website, this website, I've sent you the link so you can, and also the presentation that I did, but just go into the website and I will do a one-on-one with you and Barbara. I mean, with just you and just Barbara, or with Susan and you and Susan and
I
Barbara.
think it's a great idea to do this weekly. Same
Okay.
time, same place.
But
Yeah,
it gives me-
there's too much to absorb in
Yeah.
one meeting.
It gives me a great opportunity to hone the presentation and to explain what it is that I'm seeing and why I think it's there.
Yeah,
Okay.
Lawrence?
Yes,
Lauren?
yes, Barbara.
Yeah, you can hear me. Okay, good. I got my charge back on my phone. From what you've just said, tell me if I'm correct or incorrect in the gist of what I think you're telling us. That for the World Trade Center towers, and I want to focus on those because that's what the public cares about. I realize 7 and 4 interesting and important, but not as important. So going back to World Trade Centers 1 and 2, the towers, I
Yep.
think what you're telling me is that you believe that there was a thermonuclear device that was dialable, that was placed beneath the lowest level, the 6th floor down in the basement before the towers were built, and that
I do not surmise that it was done before the towers were built. Devices like this, you can bring equipment in, drilling equipment that will fit into those levels. It's a stackable system where you use a diamond core drill of a certain diameter. You go down, you take out a bunch of granite, and you go down further.
Okay, fine. Okay, let me ask my question differently. I don't really care before or after. I think what you're saying is you believe, this is your belief at this time, that somehow before or after the towers were built, that these devices were placed beneath the lowest basement level. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and I think what you're telling us for the towers, and I would agree with you if so, that those 2 devices beneath World Trade Centers 1 and 2 were responsible for the pre-plane impact massive explosions that went off, that Willie Rodriguez talks about, that went off beneath World Trade, he said in the basement, but it could have been below the lower basement level, but caused the disruption in the lower basement level of World Trade Center 1, 14 seconds before a plane hit, and 17 seconds before a plane hit World Trade Center 2. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I am saying that these events. Go ahead, Jeff.
2 people talking.
I can't hear you.
2 people talking at the same time.
Can't hear you, Jeff. You're cutting in and out. Why don't you let Lawrence finish answering and then.
Excuse me just a minute.
All right, there is a correlation between the towers, but what I'm surmising is that the event that William Rodriguez talked about was a much lesser seismic event than the one that created the subsidence cavities, the subsidence craters beneath the North Tower, which was a 2.3 event, and the South Tower, which was a 2.1 event.
But those are still major events.
Oh, of course, they're much more major events than what occurred in the morning before the first plane struck. And the events that occurred beneath building number 4 may have been a singular event, or it could have been 2 separate events. I mean, they could have had these 2 thermonuclear events occur almost simultaneously, or each one of them could have been independent of the other.
So let me say it a different way now that you've clarified. I think what you're saying is you believe that some other explosion caused the event that Willie Rodriguez refers to. Is that correct?
That is correct. Not the events that occurred beneath each of the towers. I believe those were seconds prior to the collapse of the core of each of those towers.
Okay, but we don't really know. I would like to say that I'm still leaving open the door to those major explosions or events that were 2.3 and 2.1 on the Richter scale, that those were in fact the pre-plane impact events.
Richter? No? That's radiation. That's isn't it? Wait a minute.
Oh, it's Richter scale. Richter scale.
Okay. Again, I'm not even sure what their standard of measurement was, whether it's Richter. Again, yeah, I'm sorry for being so fuzzy. Yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
Well, anyway, the bottom line is we do know that there were major explosions or events of some kind before the planes hit either tower by 14 and 17 seconds, respectively. The question is, were they associated with a nuclear event or not?
I
They were
believe,
not.
I
They were
believe
not.
that they were. I believe that they were, and I believe that, or I surmise that the events that, the first events, which were much lesser on the seismic readout, were possibly beneath building number 4 that created those two 40-foot spheroid cavities. Again, I don't know whether they were simultaneous or whether
Well,
each one of the,
that wouldn't, but hold on, that would not account. The event that Willie Rodriguez refers to was before Tower 1 was hit.
that's right, that's
By
correct.
about-
That's absolutely
Yeah.
correct.
And something happening, hold on, something happening in the basement level or below the basement level in World Trade Center 4 would not cause the skin to fall off of the men who came up from the basement level in World Trade Center 1.
That is not necessarily true.
Why?
I agree.
Because steam is a byproduct of a thermonuclear explosion. High pressure and high temperature steam is a byproduct, and the people had second, third degree burns, which is, commensurate with. Let me finish, Barbara. Let me finish. Commensurate with scalding, with a scalding injury. The word burned, they had skin coming off. What was the reason that skin was falling off? Because they were exposed to high pressure and high temperature steam that was generated beneath building number 4. And here's one of the conduits that it could have come through. This is the South Tower over here, and this is a break in the slurry wall. And there's also this rift beneath the World Trade Center that would be a conduit for high pressure and temperature steam to enter from the cavity beneath building number 4, and come in to the west bathtub and do those kind of injuries to people. All right, that's my explanation. Thank you.
Well, maybe, but we're talking not about World Trade. We're not talking about World Trade Center 2 with Willie Rodriguez. We're talking about World Trade Center 1.
I'm talking about everything beneath the west bathtub. It's an open area.
Can I speak?
I think Occam's razor would Willie Rodriguez himself and 24 or so others experienced an explosion beneath them, and that would have been beneath them in World Trade Center 1.
It could have been beneath them in World Trade Center 4 also.
Well, perhaps, but I think Occam's razor would argue against that. But I'll keep it open.
Okay, we'll keep it open. This is the work that I've done, and it's a broad and deep study into the seismology of the event, the magnitude of each of the events, and a correlation with the damage that was done to the bedrock. It's very clear that what occurred beneath WTC 1 and 2 created massive subsidences and very, very high magnitude seismic events. The damage, again, there's just so much that was going on that hasn't been looked at in this from this angle. That's why we're giving this presentation.
No, I understand. I'm so glad for it, and I'm glad Jeff Prager is joined and will join again.
I am too. Jeff, you had a comment to make also.
Can all of you please watch the video I linked in the chat?
Sure.
Could somebody send me the link, please, Barb, by email?
I've saved the chat, and it will be sent with the video that the recording of this Zoom as well.
Okay, good. Does everyone know what a collimator is?
No.
Collimator?
Collimator.
Oh.
Okay. When you shoot a nuclear device, you can shoot a beam of a nuclear device. We show in our book a collimator. It's a large cement wall, and it has several holes in it. And it shows how a nuclear beam can be shot through a hole, or what's called a collimator. Our position is that what caused the skin to fall off and the damage to the people around Willie Rodriguez was not a nuclear device, but an explosion to partially open the collimator under both towers.
I see.
Which would then
In other
allow,
words, yeah,
which would then allow the nuclear device to exit through the collimator.
I understand. It was a two-part process, yeah.
Yeah, the collimator was approximately 30 feet by 30 feet.
And that would have been, the collimator would have been under the lowest basement level?
That's interesting. The blueprints show the lowest portion of the building, but there's a second set of blueprints that show the collimator below elevator 55, 75 below the lowest portion of the building shown in the original blueprints.
They actually show a collimator or something that could be a collimator?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Which one?
We show it in our book in both towers.
Well, we're going to get your book and read it. So
Yeah, let me say, the book is really easy to read. It's mostly CAD drawings, a little bit of physics that's easy to understand. We made the physics such that anyone that is not understanding physics will understand the physics.
mm-hmm.
So we wrote
And
it.
do you correlate in your book, do you correlate it with the timing that we know of the pre-plane impact explosions or events, whatever they were, beneath World Trade Centers 1 and 2, and also with the major seismic events just before the collapses of the towers? Do you coordinate those?
Yes, everything is coordinated perfectly. Let me say that the two planes were necessary to open the tops of the buildings. If the tops of the buildings did not have openings, then when the nuclear devices below the buildings shot up into the buildings, they would have hit the roof and the two towers would have exploded all over New York City. The openings were to prevent that.
That's interesting. By openings, you just mean the few floors where the plane came in.
Right.
Because they had actually locked the roof doors. I don't know if people know that. They'd locked them.
Well, that doesn't matter when you have X-rays and fast neutrons moving at 22,000 meters per second and a little bit of gamma, but mostly X-rays. That causes what's called extreme rust. That's what caused the towers to fall.
Well, what do you do about 7? It didn't have an opening.
Well, because 7, the sprinklers were turned off, so there was no water, so they didn't have a water booster. So 7 was detonated 5, 6, 7 hours later, and it was allowed to cook so that the extreme rust could occur without the water booster. We explain it in intimate detail in our book. And again, it's 200 pages, but it's only like maybe a 1.5 hour read.
Yeah, we'll read it. I think we should read it before we come back.
And if you email me again another link to the Zoom meeting, I will put together a series. I had a series of slides. I threw them away because I didn't think anybody was going to do this again. But I'll recreate the slides once again.
Well, I'd rather
Jeff-
do it on these 2 hour. I can't take another hour. I've got hearings coming up.
Yep.
So I think we have to do this weekly. I can't keep up with more than 2 hours.
Yeah,
my
me
lunch
neither.
schedule.
All right.
I might suggest the next one 2 weeks so we can read the book.
Sounds good.
At least, yeah.
Okay.
Jeff-
Whatever everyone would like, I will be there.
Okay.
Okay, Jeff, could you give us your email address and phone number just for backup?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Oh, he's putting it in the chat.
There's my email.
Well, she doesn't have
I
chat.
can't, I cannot see it.
Is it
Right.
J Prager at, was it Rocket Mail? I forgot.
Yeah, rocketmail.com.
Yeah.
And there's my phone number. And for you that can't see it, you'll get it in the recording that someone said they would make. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
could you just say it? Could you just do me a favor and say it? Because I'd have to listen through 2 hours or 3 hours to get to it.
Okay, phone number 651
Uh-huh,
231
uh-huh.
7008.
651-231-7008.
Correct.
Got it. Mhm. Thanks,
Email is jprager, JPRAGER at rocketmail.com.
Got it. Okay, well, we'll do our best to read your book. It's 2 weeks enough for people to read the book?
Yeah.
The book's an hour and a half read. It's very simple read.
Yeah. Okay, but that's true for somebody who understands this stuff.
Well, but wait a second. We wrote it so that the average person can understand it.
Mm. Well, we're probably not average people, so I guess we can understand it.
Well, we spent over a year putting this book together so that anyone, really anyone, can understand the physics and the details in the book. It's believe me.
And what has happened with the book? Where has it gone? Has it resulted in any official actions? Any academic action?
It's on Amazon, and I put it on Amazon in 2018, and it's unusual, but I still get checks every month. And the book is downloaded consistently still today at Academia, and I did spend upwards of $5,000 mailing the book to almost everybody you can think of. I
Okay.
mailed it to every police captain in New York City, every fire captain in New York City. I mailed it. Staten Island had a high cancer rate, and that's because they dumped a lot of the debris from 9/11 on Staten Island in the landfill there. So I mailed it to the Staten Island City Council, and I mailed it to several individuals that came down with cancer in Staten Island. I also mailed it to Woody Harrelson, to Madonna, to a number of movie stars. I mailed it to everybody you can possibly think of. I spent a little over $5,000 on mailings.
Yeah, I can imagine. Have you received any responses?
Absolutely none. I also
Amazing.
mailed it to 100 physicists in the United States with zero response.
Well, have you mailed it to Niels Harrit?
To who?
Niels Harrit, Professor Niels Harrit, he was the first author on the peer-reviewed paper on nanothermite.
No, I didn't, because nanothermite wasn't used. The spherical iron balls that Niels Harrit found were the result of the nuclear reaction. They created those round iron balls, and those iron balls can take on 1 to 2 neutrons without becoming radioactive. And the radiation is held within that sphere, and the outside of the sphere has to wear off before the radiation can be released. I think Niels Harrit was wrong about everything. Just so you know,
He didn't know, but he's an honest person, and of all people, I think he would have an open mind actually to what you're doing.
I don't know that he's an honest person. I don't know him, but I also don't trust Richard Gage.
Well, Richard Gage absolutely will not go to anything about nuclear events. He will not touch it. He's told me so. We've had many personal one-on-one discussions over breakfast and dinners and whatever. And also I've been at conferences where, you know, the guy who, Jeff, the guy who presented your work at the Vancouver hearings, where I was also a speaker, he was at another conference where I was, where Richard Gage was, and Richard Gage took the mic and excoriated him for the very idea. And so I'm not saying I don't trust Richard Gage, he just won't go there. The other thing that Richard Gage won't touch or wouldn't touch until the Lawyers Committee came along and added it to our grand jury petition for the World Trade Centers 1 and 2 are the deep basement events, explosions, nuclear events, whatever they were, prior to the plane impacts. He also wouldn't touch those, but he was forced to do so once they were put in our grand jury petition, which they are. They're very much featured in it.
Okay, I think we all have to understand that this event, because of the nature of this event, there had to be plants everywhere. Okay, so there's a guy who called himself the anonymous physicist. Okay, and I read everything he wrote, and he was wrong. He was in, I think, Korea or Taiwan. Here's my perception, okay? I spent 11 years studying 9/11 on a full-time basis. I retired in 2005, sold my business, went to Mexico, and spent the next 11 years full-time, 7 days a week, 8 to 12 hours a day on 9/11. And what I found was that the 9/11 movement was plastered with every inconceivable notion you could imagine. Planes, no planes, this, that, thermite, this.
Oh yeah, by design, by design.
Yeah, exactly. So the group of us here have the best handle on this that I've ever seen. And just the fact that we're willing to discuss the fact that it was a nuclear event, which I knew from you know, I owned Senior Magazine and I was home that day. So I watched it on TV. And I knew from that moment that it was a nuclear event. But, you know, convincing.
How did you know that? How did you know that?
By watching one of the towers fall, okay? The towers fell, and what I saw was a tremendous amount of white smoke off to the left and a tremendous amount of black smoke off to the right. The black smoke was from the iron, and the white smoke was from the granite and the dust in the water. There were also jets of white steam coming out of manhole covers and you know, exits in the streets, which we show in our book. And there was also tremendous fires in Building 5. We show Building 5 from 4 different angles, from all 4 streets that surround it. And Building 5 was on fire. I mean, it was a major fire. And there's no reason for that other than that it was struck by nuclear, by fast moving neutrons, 20,000 mile an hour neutrons, which cause metal to burst into fire. So I knew from the very beginning that it was nuclear, and I set out to prove it. And I had a very, very difficult time doing that. Of course, no one would listen to me. And, finally in 2018, I met 4 physicists who didn't know each other, but who all believed the same thing. They all believed the same exact demolition methodology.
How did you meet them?
I saw Heinz Palmer do a 1 or 2 hour video in Sweden, and then I called him up, and he introduced me to the other 3 physicists, and I spoke to them on the telephone, and then we spent a little over a year putting this book together.
Mm-hmm.
They agreed.
Okay, one last question from me, and that is, there's no doubt in my mind, and I doubt even yours, that Stephen Jones and Niels Harrit and company, they did find the signature of military-grade nanothermite in the dust.
Yep.
So I think what you're saying is, and if so, I would agree, and I think Jane and the lawyers committee would as well, that nanothermite is part of it.
Yep.
It's definitely not all of it. You're not
Right.
saying there wasn't nanothermite, right?
It's not.
That is correct.
You'll find a book on my website called No Thermite, written by a NASA chemist. Okay. Can't remember his name offhand, but let me explain. Okay. The thermite that Niels Harrit found has a velocity of 895 meters per second. If you add copper to it, you can increase it to about 2100 meters per second. But at 895 meters per second, it could not have done what we saw.
No, not alone. I understand. My question to you was different. My question is, are you willing to admit that nanothermite was used for some purpose in the towers?
No, because at 895 meters per second velocity, it was nothing more than a match. It was nothing more than a matchstick. It had no more velocity than when you light a match.
Oh, I think
No,
9/11 synthesis disagrees with that.
Well, 895 meters per second velocity, you have to look that up.
Well, we're not talking about velocity. We're talking about temperature and work to be done with that temperature. In other words, the severing, possibly to the degree of explosive. But thermite and nanothermite could there is evidence that, there's evidence of nanothermite. The testing of the material, what is it called? I don't even know the process of testing, but the signature of the
Electron microscopy.
What?
The signature of nanothermite is present, period.
Yeah.
The question, nobody here, I don't believe, is saying that it was the explanation for all of this. Far from it. But it was part.
Nanothermite was not necessary at all.
I don't think that the nuclear was necessary, but for some reason, this is what got me for the longest time. Why would they do this below the buildings, and understanding that the creation of a subsidence, the simple mechanical creation of a subsidence to allow the core to drop just prior to this point in time, look at this corner. The core is on its way down before you see any explosions up top. The core is falling before you even see the evidence of explosive activity up top. This is when the explosion starts, when the core starts to fall. There's no pressure until the core, which is like 80 stories below this point, is on its way down. It's absolutely insane.
And that's because the X-rays cause extreme rust. Now, let me explain nanothermite from Lawrence Livermore, okay? At Lawrence Livermore Labs, they explain that nanothermite is designed to burn rapidly. It burns for just seconds.
Yeah, that's true.
and then it's gone.
Yeah.
So there was no reason to use nanothermite. The nuclear explanation explains all of it. Nanothermite wasn't necessary. Now, like I
Wasn't it
said,
necessary? Well, just a minute. Wasn't it necessary to cut the beams into the nice sections that they loaded them up on the truck
Semantics, Barbara, columns.
or
yeah,
columns?
no,
Column?
because nanothermite at velocity of 895 meters per second could not have cut those columns.
Shaped charges could very well have been the use of the incorporation of shaped charges. I mean, you can see the column. Hold on a second. You've had the floor for quite a while, Jeff. You can see evidence of long diagonal cuts in the columns that were left at the bottom and in the columns that were hauled away from the site, which when the core started to drop allowed the sections to slide off as the top-down explosive activity was happening.
Okay,
And that could have been very well, different forms of, the top-down stuff, I think, was generally conventional stuff after the columns were severed, or possibly a combination of the nanothermite as in its explosive activities. There apparently is evidence broadly accepted in the community that nanothermite was used, and I concur that there was a pre-softening of the building that was done conventionally, and that the explosive top-down sequence was a conventional rather than nuclear event, that the nuclear events occurred below, and their purpose was the creation of subsidence craters, subsidence cavities beneath each of the buildings to take support away for the core columns of building number 7 and each of the twin towers just prior to the top-down explosive destruction of the buildings. And you can see the sequence in that clip that I just showed. The core is falling before, just a second before the explosive top-down activity starts. You can see that the corner of the building is coming down. You can see in larger pictures and other views that the antenna is coming down, or that the top of the building is toppling, is falling off to the side. And that all happens before the visible high explosive top-down sequence of demolition. Yeah, it's become very clear to me over the years. So I give the control back to Susan. And
Speaking of control, it's now going on our 3rd hour almost.
Yikes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm not a night owl. I usually go to bed around 9, and it's approaching 10 o'clock, and I'm fading fast.
Well,
Me
that's why I'm
too.
saying let's do this weekly, because my brain's gone right now. And I've got 3 dogs too, so it's not helping. The fact
Jane,
I have to clean up my house for a
Could we-
reason. Yeah.
Could we do the next one in 2 weeks so we can read the book?
Can I say one more thing?
yeah,
Okay, I emailed Niels Harrod and I asked him to estimate the amount of thermite required. He responded that 72,000 tons, between 72,000 and 144,000 tons would be required. So I did the math. It would have taken, working 24 hours a day, it would have taken 5,000 regular tractor trailers to load those buildings if they could take a 1-ton box and load it every 15 minutes, which was completely impossible. If they worked 8 hours a day, it would have taken 3 years to load the buildings. So I don't believe nanothermite had a part in this. And like I said, there's a book on my website called No Thermite, written by a chemist from NASA. And it explains why nanothermite was not used in those buildings. It's not possible. The nanothermite found by Harrod has a velocity of 895 meters per second which is exactly similar to a match, to lighting a match.
Okay,
So let's-
that may be, but it was there. It's there.
It
Why
was
is it there
found.
then?
I think it's time to call tonight, and what I would like to do, I mean,
Pick this up.
you've got Jeff's contact information. Um,
Yeah,
while we
let's
while we're,
continue in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
I'm too tired,
me too.
Yeah,
and
couple of
it's
couple
not
of weeks.
it's not
Anybody can
healthy.
call me. Anybody can call me
yeah,
anytime.
yeah.
Anybody can email me anytime. I'm up from 7 in the morning till midnight.
Okay.
Lucky
Thank you all.
Thank you so
I
much.
admire your.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Yeah,
Jeff.
this has
I
been
want to
good.
thank you very much for joining us tonight. And
Yes.
we are in a fundamental disagreement. That's okay. We're going to get to
You
the bottom of this.
fundamentally agree, though, as well.
What?
You have agreements, so that's.
Well, we
let's
do have an
focus
agreement
on
as
that.
far as what one aspect of this, which has to do with the
Yeah.
use of
So let's
thermonuclear
focus on the
devices.
agreements.
But
Yeah,
before we go on the chat, I've put in this document we found from New York.
Mhm.
It was on one of their videos, and it's just a screenshot, and it kind of correlates with some of the stuff you're talking about. It's a subway. If you click and open it, you'll see the picture, and it just it's at
Can you do
8:46.
that? Yeah, can you do that, Lorenzo? Because
Yeah, I'm looking right now. Hold on a second.
Yeah, 8:46 and 30
Oh, you put it in the,
seconds.
wait a minute. I don't see it in the chat, Jane. It's to everybody?
Me to everyone. Uh-huh.
Do you see it in the
JC.
chat, Susan?
It's only
I do, but
JC.
when I click on it, it doesn't open for me.
It
I
opens.
doesn't.
don't even see it in the chat right now.
It's one,
177.
2, 3, the third one up. It's just an image from Jane Clark to everyone at 9:05.
Oh, okay. Let's see what happens here.
Yeah, it's 8:40. The times. It's a dispatcher talking to a train operator.
Oh, okay. I see it. I can share it if you want.
Yeah,
Please do.
yeah.
Oh, shoot. Where'd it go? Come on. Oh, no, that's not the one. Hold on a second.
Okay,
Ah.
go to sleep, Sue. I'm gonna get off.
Well, if I hang up, everybody's gone, and we want to see this picture first.
This is
Okay.
this is train operator.
I'm looking.
Train operator talking to a dispatcher.
Right.
And it's
Okay.
right there at Cortland.
Yeah, I've got it.
Right there at
Oh,
Cortland.
you got it?
Yeah, it's in
Yeah.
the chat. It begins with 177958595.
Yep, I
Right,
got
I
it. I
see
did
it,
have,
I see it in the chat, but when I click on it, I don't get an image. It just.
okay, I've
brings-
got the image now and hopefully I'm closing it. There it is. Okay, I can share it. There it is. Okay. Bingo, I'll be
Well,
right there.
I do have one other question. Is Alan still on?
No,
No,
he's
Alan
not.
left quite a while ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sue, would you send me Alan's email and phone
sure.
if you have it? If he's the guy who was near Stewart Air Force Base, I
Right.
want to call him.
Right. Okay.
Good.
Okay.
All right, here's
Thank
that image that you were looking
And it
at.
was nice meeting everyone, Bill included.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, this is very helpful.
So-
I mean, we have to remember that it can be these different mechanisms will not necessarily rule out another mechanism.
That I concur with. Yep.
We can put it back on later if we need to.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I gotta go.
Thank you very much for
Very
joining
good.
us.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for your time.
All
Jeff,
right.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bill, Susan, Lawrence, thank you
everybody.
all.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Sleep well.
You too. Everybody, peace.
Hey, Lawrence.
Yes.